Hello and welcome to the Petticoated Swashbuckler. My name is Maren, and today we're going to do what it says on the tin and make a petticoat. I have an afternoon tea coming up, an Edwardian afternoon tea. And I do have my outfit, mostly. I have a dress, I have a belt, I have a hat, and I have most of the underpinnings, but I could really use a new petticoat because the one I have is very blue and the dress is very white, so I think that'll look very weird. So I'm just going to make like simple, no fuss white petticoat. And I thought, why not make this, I was going to say like a teachable moment, but that's something else, isn't it? Like a learning experience, a tutorial. It's a tutorial. It's a tutorial. I am going to show you how I draft my skirts using what's called the Keystone Guide to Jacket and Dress Cutting, I think, or something like that. I will link it down below. It is open source. It was published in New York in, I think, 1895, the 1890s for sure. And it is basically a system, it's a method, it's a manual on how to construct patterns to fit your body using your own measurements. And it looks more complicated than it is in the book because it's very schematic, and they use a little bit sort of old-fashioned language, and they talk, they're not always clear on whether they use like your waist measurement or just half your waist measurement. So I thought I'd simplify it a little bit and show you. This will work no matter your size. You can be very petite or you can be very plus size, and it will still work because it uses your measurements and like the proportions of your body. It will not work if your hips are more than 20 inches larger than your waist. So if your hip measurement is up to 20 times as big as your waist measurement, that's fine. If you have an even more pronounced hourglass figure, if that ratio is even bigger, you will run into a few problems. I will talk about them. I probably won't show you in this video how to deal with them, but I can show that in a later video if that's something that you'd like. But for everyone else, you need only 2 measurements and it will fit you. And it'll look good, and it'll look historically correct and right. I have seen people use this pattern for a lot of different eras. It is from the 1890s, but you can use it for 1900s, or I've even seen some people use it into the 19-teens. I've seen people use it for the 1870s and 1880s for bustle gowns, so that's a possibility. I'll show you in a minute how you can adjust the pattern to fit over a bustle. And it's just very versatile, and I love it, and it's very nice. I will use inches and centimeters a little bit interchangeably in this video because I'm Norwegian. We have the metric system, but everyone in like the American part of the costuming world uses the imperial system, and the result is that most of us who are not Americans become almost like bilingual in our measuring systems. So I use that a lot when I sew myself. I can think like, oh, I need this to be like 15 centimeters long, and then I'll take 1 inch off. You know, so I'll use them interchangeably in my daily life as well. But whether you use inches or centimeters doesn't really matter. All that matters is the proportions, and they'll be fine. Are there any more collabs that I need to come up with? No. I think we're good. Let's get to it. Okay. We have everything we need. This will do the job of pattern paper for us today. You need a pen. You need some scissors after a while. And you need a ruler, preferably a transparent one because it makes it much easier to make good angles, straight, true angles. You will also need a measuring tape, probably, but because we're working small scale, this will do the job of both. All right, so what we're making is, we're making what's often called seven gore skirt or a 7-panel skirt. So we'll have a front panel, and then you'll have 2 side front panels, 2 side back panels, and 2 back panels. But because this skirt is similar, from either side, the left and the right side is the same, you just need to draft half the skirt. You just need to draft half of the front panel, the side front panel, 1 side front panel, 1 side back panel, and 1 back panel. And you only need 2 measurements. So you need your waist measurement, and you need the length of your skirt. And my waist measurement for this skirt is 80 centimeters. But because we're only making half a skirt, you only need half the waist measurement, so that's 40 centimeters. And the length of it is 100 centimeters. So these are really the only 2 measurements that you need to care about. All right, to begin drafting, you need to make a long line along the right side of your pattern paper. It can be quite long. It can be... And towards the top of it, we're going to make a point. This is our starting point. We call that point O or point 0. From point O, you measure your half waist measurement down the line. So 40 centimeters. 10, 20, 30, 40. Call that number 1. Then from line number 1, you measure the length of your skirt, 100 centimeters down. So that'll be here. Call that point 2. This bit here, this will be the front of your skirt. So when you cut your front, this line will be on the fold of your fabric. What we're going to do now is we're going to mark the waistline and the hemline. Starting with the waistline, what we do is we make a lot of points at 40 centimeters from the starting point. This is where you can use like a compass thing, you can use a pencil and a string. I tend to just tape my measuring tape to the point 0 and just sort of move it around and make marks on it. Then adding the length of the skirt to it, so 100 centimeters plus 40 centimeters, that's 140, last time I checked. You are making lots of the similar little notches at 140 centimeters from the starting point. And you'll see that what we end up with are 2 quarter circles, really. I mean, you can draw them all the way around and make half circles, but you don't really need to. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to match these up, draw lines out of them. So we end up with 2 curves, one small and one big. This is your waistline, this curve here, and this will be your hemline. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark out the waistline. Just going to narrow this a little bit. The waistline of your 3 first panels, the front, the side front, and the side back, along this line. And because we have 4 panels, you know, front, side, back, and back, we can divide that waist measurement on 4. That will give us 10 centimeters. So I'm going to mark 10 centimeters. And this will be this distance here, up here. Now, we need to do something clever, because you want your skirt to curve nicely out from your waist to your hips. You don't want it to flare sort of directly out. You want a nicer, sort of more gentle curve. And this is where you have to change it up a bit if you have a very pronounced hourglass figure. Then you have to either make more room along the waistline, or you have to allow for your skirt panels to kind of go into each other, just so you can have that extra room. But for now, we're just gonna make a small gap here, allowing for a small, almost like dart from the kind of closest from the hips up to the waist. I usually use just 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch approximately. Then you draw another 10 centimeters, another gap, another little notch there at 1 inch, another 10 centimeters. And then, because most of us, we carry more weight aft than fore, to put it that way, we usually need a little extra room towards the back of our body. We're gonna make that notch a little bigger. Not a lot, maybe, 1.25 inches instead of 1 inch, or 3 centimeters instead of 2. Just a little bit. Okay, what we need to do now is to find the midpoints between all of these sets of notches. So this one here, call that 2. Here, call it 3. And here, call that 4. What you need to do now is to using O as your starting point and moving through those midpoints all the way down to the hem, and you make lines. 3.3 there. Oh, sorry. 3.2. Then I like to go make a mark about 10 centimeters down. If you are very short-waisted, you might want to do maybe 7 or 8 centimeters. If you're very long-waisted, if the distance between your waist and your hip is longer, maybe you want to do 11 or 12 centimeters. But this is where it's really good to like make a mock-up to make sure. Then we are going to make it like a gentle curve out from these points down here up to those 2 notches that we made on either side of the lines. And that really is it. We are now done with our first three of 4 skirt panels. That was easy, wasn't it? This is the front, and side back, and they're all done. We could cut them out, but that would make it very messy, so we'll wait with it until we're done with drafting the back panel. You want the back panel, you can of course do the same where you just give another 10 centimeters and another line, and there you go. That's not the Keystone way, but that's fine, you can do that. However, most historical skirts have a little bit of pleating or gathering in the back. And again, that's because you usually need more room over your butt than you need over your tummy or your sort of front hip area. And to allow for that little bit of extra extra pleating and extra room, we're not going to follow this line right now. We're just going to place, this is where the translucent ruler comes in handy, because I'm just going to make sure that this line goes on top of the pencil line that I've drawn here. And I'm going to make a line straight out. And to make this proportional, I like to take the length that I already have here, so 10 centimeters plus 10 centimeters plus 10 centimeters, that's 30 centimeters, and make that the equivalent, so 30 centimeters. Make a mark there, let's call that 5. And then you can make another sort of straight line right down to the hem. I'm sorry, my pencil is acting up. And this is actually, you're done with this. You can use this as your back panel. Just a almost very rectangular piece with just a little curving at the hem. This will make for a very narrow skirt shape, but if you want a very narrow skirt shape, say that for instance, you're creating a skirt for like the 1912, 13, 14 period, when skirts were very narrow, this will be fine. you have enough room to move and you'll be fine. You'll look right, you'll look good. I, however, want a little bit more flare to my skirt. So what I like to do is I like to add a little bit onto this here. Because my waist measurement is 40 centimeters, I'm gonna add 40 centimeters because just to keep it sort of proportional. And then I'm gonna draw a line between that notch and 0.5. And because I want to make sure that I have that extra length to go over my butt in a nice way, I'm just going to add like 2.5 centimeters here, an inch, redraw that waistline, and this will be my back panel. That'll give you a more flared skirt. If you want a really big skirt, what the Keystone manual tells you to do is to find the midpoint between your starting point and point 1. So this was 40 centimeters, so the midpoint should be at 20. And then to really add as much length along this as you want. So if we want it to be even, you know, wider than a quarter circle, we can add more notches, we can make that curve bigger. You add as much length to this as you want. Say that I want it to be all the way up here. This is the width that I want for the hem of my skirt. Say that I'm making a bustle dress, for example. I'm going to use this over a bustle. I need that extra room over the bustle. I need that extra length and width to the hem. Then you draw a line between that and the midpoint. Let's call that 0.6, just for kicks. And then this will be your waistline, 0.7, and this will be your hem. If you're using this over a bustle, or really in any way, you should add a little bit of length down here. Measure how much extra length you need to go over your bustle, or how much extra length you want it to be, and just add that to the line, so that I need 30 centimeters extra. I want a big bustle and a bit of a train. And then you just recurve this into the hem in a nice way. Something like that. This will be a very big, very bell-shaped skirt, where this is your waistline and then this is your hemline. So now we can start cutting them out, all these bits and pieces of ours. This is the front panel. Then your side front. Side back. And then if you want that really, really big skirt, you need to cut along the waistline here and all the way down to your new hem. And this will be your back panel. So front, side front, side back, and back. If you just want the very simple narrow one, you cut this line here and this waistline. If you want the slightly flared skirt that I'm going to use, you're just going to cut this line. And then this will be a back panel. What I like to do, if these were my real pattern pieces that I was going to make a skirt with, I like to label them. So I like to say when I made them. So that would be March 23. And I like to write what it is. So back. And I always write that I have not added seam allowance. These pattern pieces are without seam allowances, so you'll have to add that yourself. Again, March 23, side back, no seam allowance. Now for the front bit, I also like to add this mark here, just to remind me that this is to be placed on the fold. So if this is the fabric that I'm going to use, I would place the front on the fold like this, because that way you get it. You don't need to have like a seam down the middle of your skirt. I like to stitch these together. I cut them out. You know, you want one of these on the fold, and then two of these, and two of these. And you also need to cut a waistband, and you might want to cut like a little placket to cover your opening. That's just a square that's as long as the length of your back opening or side opening, if you're having a side opening, your opening. And then you fold it in half and stitch it around, and then stitch it to the inside of one side of your opening, so that when the skirt closes, instead of having like a gap, that'll be covered by the placket. Very poorly describing plackets with hand movements, sorry. You might also want to add like pockets, for example. This will be a good place to have pockets between the side front and the side back. You might want to add a flounce at the hem, you know, have fun. This is just the basics, this is the bones. You add all the nice stuff. I like to, when I stitch these together, I like to start with stitching the side fronts to the front on both sides, and then the side backs to the side fronts on both sides, and then the backs on both sides. And I will use French seams because this fabric that I'm using is quite see-through, but you can do whatever seam finishing you like. If you want a side opening instead of a back opening, I'll have a back opening. I would do the side seam where you want the opening last, so that you can add the placket and stuff. And I like to make my waistbands very narrow, because most of the historical examples that I've seen have very narrow waistbands. Mine are 5 centimeters, so about this wide, and then I fold them in half and fold them once more, so they really end up being an inch, 2.5 centimeters approximately, if that. This is the pattern. I hope that made some kind of sense. It is easier than it looks in the book. The book is very has a more sort of diagram. Yeah, it looks more difficult in the book than it is. I hope this made it look a little less difficult. Yeah, let's get to sewing. Let me show you the final product. Guys, I'm so happy with it. It's so quick. You can use whatever closure you like in the back. I just threaded like a ribbon through the waistband and then tied it in the back, because that gives me a lot of, like, I can adjust it to wear with different corsets. But you can use buttons or hooks and eyes, whatever you want. And this was really quick. From I started drafting until I was done, it took less than 5 hours. So that's great. I'm now going to show you some pictures of how it looked when I wore it, even though you won't see this actual skirt because it will be under a dress. But I still thought it'd be fun to show you the end result. But before we go to that, I have a little bit of sad news. Bad news? Sad news? I don't know. Life happens, situations change, and I will no longer be going to the Victorian Ball in Bath in the end of April. Which is sad, but you know, I hope I can go next year. I hope I find another 1830s 40s event, because I have all the underpinnings. It'll be fun to use them. But yeah, you won't be seeing me there. You will be seeing a lot of other interesting stuff though. So hang tight for that. And now enjoy some pictures of me in a big hat. Until next time.